quick before we start. I hate editing. It is by far my least favorite part of photography, but what I will tell you is it is absolutely half of photography. If you want to be a great photographer, you have to get great at editing. And I say that because you can be out here taking some of the best photos in the world, and if you edit it like garbage, it's going to look like garbage. And on top of that, what I'm really guilty of, I'm calling myself out here, I will take photos and I will sit on them for months because this is really different from what photography is. Photography is going into the world, interacting with people, being in nature, being alive. And to me, this is the complete opposite. It's sitting in front of a screen for hours on end, doing nothing in the dark, but tedious work, and it drives me nuts. So I will take a photo, sit on it for months. It's really bad. If you get good at editing and you make it part of your regular schedule, you're going to crank photos out way more regularly and you're going to get to share way more of your work. So a couple things also. Normally, this is not the setting I edit in. I have some lights on in front behind me just so you can see me really well. I typically like to set a very dark, neutral lighting situation to edit so that no colors are interfering with what I see on the screen. What I will give you, though, is if you're a laptop person, like to go to the coffee shop, good on you, knock that work out. I don't care about, if there's a window behind you or whatever. It's way better to get the work done than be like, I gotta be in a perfect color calibrated room. I'm just saying I don't normally edit like this. Another thing I will say is set yourself up so you don't have distractions. I like to get tea. I like to have a water bottle. And the other thing is music or a podcast, just something long. Usually I'll go through a bunch of albums. Like I'll just pick an album that I know I can listen through. Playlist, if you have it, it's great. But I wouldn't have something where you need to like pick up your phone and change songs all the time. Give yourself the opportunity to just focus on the photo at hand. Let's jump into the photo. Okay, so we're here in Lightroom, and I'm going to take you from Lightroom to Photoshop to final product. I'm not going to spend too much time going over what the settings mean, like saturation versus vibrance, but I just want you to see the decisions I would make with a photo, and hopefully I can try and explain them, and hopefully it helps. But this is an image I chose. This is from about 2 or 3 years ago. I shot this on an 80D with a kit lens, so I'm hoping it has the editing latitude that most of your cameras will have, because certain cameras just have more stops of dynamic range, and this one right here is whatever the 80D is. But this is a skill we're going to pass over, but it's really important. Let's say this senior shoot, I shot 100 photos. You should really get good at knowing which of those 100 photos you should choose to edit and publish to show off, the best of your work. Today I chose this one, and I like it because it has a lot of contrast, a lot of shadow, a lot of highlights. I think it'll be interesting to overcome, essentially. But when I have an image like this, the first thing I do is look at the crop options. I already know I don't want to crop this, but I'll look at what everything looks like, maybe what it'll look like on Instagram when I have to do the 4x5. I don't actually crop it, though. I just know and keep it in my mind, so when I'm doing the edits, I have it in my head. But I like to crop it at the very end if I am going to crop it. First thing I do, take the profile, and I'll drop it down to neutral. So when your camera shoots a photo, you have a lot of raw data, and it's just interpretation. I'm telling this to interpret this raw as neutrally as it humanly can, so I can make as many decisions as I want. Another thing is I'll go in with the lens correction. If you're shooting on most modern cameras, it should recognize what camera you shot this on. If not, you can come in here and select what you need to select. 18 to 135 here. It'll just correct the vignetting as well as the distortion from that lens, depending on the focal length you shot in. From there, I do typically like to set the exposure. There's a lot of shadows in this photo, like he's got a black shirt. The sun's like over here where the histogram would have been, so most of this is in shadow. So just to make sure I have a lot of detail in the shadows to play with, I might bump that up just a hair. From there, I'm going to come in and set the tone curve. I like to put this middle dot in here to lock in the midtones that I just selected with the exposure. And then I'm going to come in here and just add a little bit of contrast. I don't like to go too crazy. I always know I can add a little bit more later. And you can see when you set the highlights, it's going to bend your shadows down a little bit more just because of the way it works. Because if I come here, it'll whoop. But I like to just come in here and make usually about 5 points. You can do things a little differently, but I just like to go for that S tone curve. It's just going to provide a lot of contrast right off the bat. In the histogram here, I can already see I have a little bit of highlights, cropping. It's white. It's the sun. It's the sky. It's going to be bright. I'll come and fix that later. From there, I'm going to look and see, maybe I just want a little bit more details in the shadows. So what I'm going for essentially is I want to knock out all the universal edits. These are edits that are going to essentially affect the entire photo. And then after that, we'll go into more local edits. So doesn't need too much dehaze, clarity, nothing like that. I did mix one step. It's going to happen. I'm live streaming. Not live streaming. I'm just recording. And it's not normally how I do it. But usually I like to bump the saturation. I like to bump the sharpness up to 70. I'm not going to do the keyboard shortcut just because I want you to be able to see what I'm doing. I will like to view it 100% just so I can see exactly how much sharpness is coming into the photo. I can read all the letters. Not a whole lot of this photo is in focus, but I feel pretty good about where that's at. From there, I'll usually go into more local edits. So right over here, we're going to have, I'll start with the sky just because I already know that's a little bit, that's actually really funny. It'll select his head. I'm going to lower that just a hair. And if I come in here, I can actually subtract that. So I'll just use a brush and we will subtract from his head just because we'll edit him how I want to edit him. From there, maybe we'll take a look at bumping the foreground. So I'll take a gradient and we'll bump this up here. And I'll usually go at the contrast first. So typically in a natural scenario, something close to you is going to have a lot of contrast, and haze is going to naturally appear in the atmosphere as it is further away. So if I had, like, this is Nebraska, so you know there's not a mountain for miles, but if there was mountains, I wouldn't want to take all the haze out of them, essentially. It just wouldn't look right. You're essentially trying to edit this photo to speak to the human mind, and that's, you know, if you want to get into AI and all that stuff, you know, you look at a photo and you're like, something's not right here. I like to also always come in here and just take a look at what that looks like without it. And I actually think it needs a little more exposure and a little less contrast. We'll come in here next and we'll maybe add a little bit more clarity to the dirt in this tire. Nothing too crazy, just enough to kind of highlight it. And we might put just a hair of clarity. Clarity, there's a lot of edits where less is more typically. And all the sunlight's over here. And I like to have a little bit of a story as far as, you know, just the lighting of a photo. So I might come over here and I might make this a little bit darker, like he's driving from the lightness to the dark kind of thing. It just lets the viewer's eye lead from one point to another a little bit easier. Totally forgot another edit, and this is completely part of how I edit. So let me real quick try and define how I edit. I would call it stumbling around in the dark. I just play with stuff until it looks right. But I usually like to set the white balance, and you want to look at things like his shirt or not necessarily anyone's shirt, but this is black and white. So you know that those should be a little neutral. Might look a little messy on YouTube here, but I think there's just a hair too much magenta, so I'll just put a little bit of green in there. Other than that, I think the camera did the auto white balance pretty great. From there, we'll usually go in with more local edits, and maybe we'll come for the sky here. Want just a little more brightness. Nothing too crazy, but just enough that you really know that's where the sun's coming from. From there, maybe let's take a look at color. So I'll take these and I'll just drag them left and right. I can see the red is here and here, and I want to take it just a little bit to the left because it looks a little weird when I take it from orange. So these are essentially all the color channels, and we're trying to just set what looks the most natural. Red looks terrible. Definitely going to be a lot more close to yellow tone. I want to keep the orange looking orange, so I'm going to bring it to the yellow, but I'm not necessarily going to make it the orange yellow. The yellow is right here. I know I took this photo in the fall, so I'm going to take it just a hair to the left, add a little bit, bring the yellow a little closer to orange. The green here, and it's probably because we're in the shade, but that green I know is looking pretty dark. From there we have blue. In a photo like this where the highlights are really warm, I know a lot of this blue is going to be in the shadows here. And I totally skipped aqua. And you can see it up in that tree in the top left. I'm going to bring aqua a little closer to green. Typically, I don't like to make anything 100%, so I might be really aggressive with it, but I usually don't love to bring anything to 100%. And, you know, I know I'm going to desaturate this, so I can bring it just a hair to the left because I know it's going to complement the kind of oranger tone I'm going for in the sky. And purple, yeah, well, this is my one exception. I'll bring this pretty far to blue a lot of the times. Magenta tends to be closer to red, so yeah, you can see it in that hand grip in the front. We're going to make that red. And a lot of these edits will have something where you can bring this in. You can see, like, especially in this guard right here, there's a lot less clipping with that color. And we've just kind of pushed colors into the right profile, so there's not a lot of color casting. Colors aren't looking like they got, you know, a little bit of red in them when they're not supposed to. I'm going to bring that to like 20 right there just because I think these are pretty prominent parts of the subject, and I would like for them to be highlighted. Oh yeah, the yellows was really powerful here in the fall. I don't want to bring it to 100, but we'll get it pretty far up there. Green I actually would say is one of the hardest colors to edit properly. I'm gonna bring it like right there. I know aqua's up in that tree. I'm gonna bring the saturation up just a little bit. I actually thought I was gonna bring it down, but if I take it down, you got to be careful because sometimes stuff just looks weird if there's no color there. But we got that down. We'll take the blue here, and I kind of had a feeling I was going to desaturate this just a hair. I don't want to go too far. I just want to make it look... I want it to look natural. I would say I'm going for exaggerated realism is how I would put that. And I was never looking at that and thinking absolutely blue. Some will come back in when we do the color calibration later for sure. And that's what you need to also remember with Lightroom. You typically just want to aim for a pretty neutral profile. Magenta. I don't like it in the bush as much. I think it's a little too much. And that's sometimes the hard part about universal edits is I'll be like, I love it in that forearm thing, but I hate it out there in the trees. You'll just have to go make manual edits later to fix it, essentially. Luminance, I would always kind of think about this like how much light is hitting your object. I tend to be usually the most mild with this one. It just gets the photo looking unnatural really quick. It depends. There's usually just a better way to do things. So normally sometimes you'll see like, oh, there's the sky's blue, and if I drag the blue slider down, typically you'll just get really weird fringing as far as like on the rocks or the mountain or whatever you have. It'll just look really weird at the edge of where those colors meet. And that's typically why I don't like to go too crazy. I'll bring a little bit of brightness right here into these. But as you can see here, compared to some of the numbers above it, these are pretty minor pumps in luminance. And from here, we'll take it to Photoshop, actually. I feel pretty good about that. So this maybe doesn't have as much contrast as I like, but I feel pretty good across the board of where the photo's at. And usually I feel like I can accomplish anything in Photoshop. So even if I made a mistake where maybe I should have pumped, you know, a little more contrast here, a little more brightness there, I usually feel pretty confident that I can get it to where I want in Photoshop. And I can view the subject. Nothing in the background is really exactly where I want it, but it's just neutral. So I can color calibrate, I can bring in the lightness, and let me show you that now. All right, so we're from Lightroom to Photoshop, and this is where I'll typically come in and start to do a color edit. So I'll come in with color balance, and I like to start with shadows, then highlights, and do midtones last. I can already tell you just looking at the shadows, just a tad too much red for my taste. Probably a little magenta there. And this one is actually usually the harder edit because like you can see over here, a little bit of warmth and that grass is nice. I tend to like blue shadows, but that is actually usually the one that'll go in either direction. The other two, cyan and magenta, typically tend to go in the other directions. I'll add warmth to the highlights later. I like to do a little bit cyan on this side too. And we'll check to see. Definitely magenta, but not a lot. And I like to add warmth in my highlights a lot of the time. And I'll show you why here in just a second. That's pretty aggressive, actually. Didn't even see that. We'll go pretty aggressive. I actually think it looks great. And one thing I'll do a lot is I'll just go in here and look at those adjustments as they come through. Go to midtones now. Probably just want like -1. -1 here. And probably a little more warmth. Yeah, I can definitely see the more warmth, but I don't think it actually... It doesn't actually... I definitely think the more warmth adds just a better image. That was so well spoken. From there, I'll typically go into do a selective color, and I'll come into whites, and I'll add just a little bit of white into a little bit of blue into all my whites. And the way we do that is we'll actually do negative yellow. I think like that amount right there looks pretty good. It's not a huge difference, but I just think it makes whites look just a little bit more white. From there, I like to go to levels, and I'll go by the colors. And I just like to make sure with all three channels, that's pretty close with the blue. I might bump that up just a little bit, but I like to make sure it touches both walls. And then I'll come into my middle setting and I'll throw it way askew. And I just... And we did just bump a lot of blues into everything, a lot of cyans, but it actually does look like it just wants a little red. Probably even a little more magenta. Just a hair. I typically don't go too crazy on these ones. And that's part of it. This isn't the interesting part. This is why editing is so boring. It is just going through and actually looking at every color option. Because like here I'm actually a little conflicted. I'm like, it looks pretty good warm. And I think it looks pretty good a little cool. But with this being fall and all, I think a little bit of warmth is going to go further, is just making the image feel right. from there, I'll typically go into brightness and contrast, and I'll just mess with it. Like I'll be like, the foreground could use just a little bit. And I'm hitting Command I here to inverse my brightness. You can see this one black here. I'll pull the brush out and I'll make it larger with, I'm hitting the bracket right key. I hope that helps. But that'll make it larger if you hit that. And you can see white and black here. If you hit X, it'll actually switch between those colors, but I want to apply this edit. I'm going to put even just a little bit more contrast into the foreground. We're going to go for the rest of this image, and we'll maybe put just a hair more brightness into these trees right here. They're pretty bright. I want them to be bright. And around here, when I make about this many edits, I'll come here and duplicate this layer, and I'll just put a test layer in. And I'll pull that to the top, and it'll just live there. And that'll let me see all the adjustments we've made. So you can see I've brought a lot of warmth in, and a little bit of brightness and contrast. And we'll just keep doing that. Essentially, I'll just maybe, I want a little more brightness in this corner. I just kind of drag and watch an area, and from there I'll decide what I want to do. I think we want a little more contrast in front of him. And we can take a look, and it's good to take a look and see that I've made an improvement on this image, because look, no matter how many videos you watch, you're going to get better at editing, but you're going to start somewhere. And as long as you can take the image out of your camera and improve it from where it was, that's a good edit. And there's a large there's a large spectrum between being a good and bad editor. But if you can just make it better than it was, you're killing it. And then get better than yourself. And from here, I usually will see that this is black and this is white. And I actually think that as of right now, this is pretty neutral just because of the edits I've made. But I like to come into the hue saturation, and I'll just take some of the saturation out and I'll invert it. And we want to make sure we don't hit the red or any important colors. But I just like to take a little bit of color out of these whites and blacks, just so they look as white and black as they're supposed to look. Otherwise, these are the most susceptible colors to, reflections off of other sources of light. Blue will get on white a lot, and black can also get pretty blue. An alternative edit would be if you wanted to put a little bit of warmth into your subject, if they're wearing all neutral colors. Oh no, I did exactly what I said not to do. So you hit X here, and we'll just add the color right back in. Also, part of the reason I hate editing is doing like these. This one doesn't need to be pixel perfect, but these edits suck. To put it blunt. Oh no, we don't want it there. Those are like yellow. And this edit, typically I'll do a pretty soft edit to see if it justifies doing the whole edit. So that's a pretty small difference. So we'll probably just bring a little bit more color back into his neck by painting some white there. But I don't think this is too bad as is. We've knocked a little bit of color casting out, especially you can see it right there on the cushion. I think it's good enough. And you can get pixel perfect with every single edit you make for the rest of time. I don't think, first off, Instagram, your website, it's not going to show that great. And if you're printing, you got to get pretty big for people even to notice stuff like that. You should have a lot of attention to detail, but you don't need to be at like 300%, 400%. Like, I don't think that's perfect. But I do like to, on the subject, maybe come up. Wrong way. That's already pretty good. And if you hit the slash, it'll let you see what you're doing. In the bottom left corner, you'll see the number that you're zoomed in. Photoshop will know what the resolution of your screen is, and it will essentially say, if I zoom to this percentage, this will be pixel perfect accurate, because either way, above or below 100%, it's upscaling or downscaling. And if you print, it is important to look at your photos at this, but I'm at about 100%, and it looks great in my opinion. That's where I feel comfortable. If anything stuck out to me, I'd be like, oh yeah, I really gotta go in and brush over here a little bit more, brush there. A desaturation edit is typically pretty basic. From here, I'll be honest, I don't actually really know exactly what I want to do. I could make a little bit of brightness in this front number just because there's a number there. Draw interest to what is interesting. Usually a good way to go about it. So from here, I'm thinking maybe I could add a little bit more interest on the subject itself. We're going to come in here and just paint a little bit of brightness onto these numbers. And screw it, we'll do the tire too. That's pretty interesting. His foot here kind of looks weird, so I think we're going to bring some contrast down. And we're just going to make the white and the black really pop from each other. From there, I'm probably actually going to use one of the tactics I like to use, because these blacks and these whites are a little too... If I edit the blacks, it's going to look gray, which it wasn't. If I edit the whites, it's either going to look not as white or it's going to clip, and you really can't go right there. So one of the things you can do is make an object pop out more through contrast. So if I come in here and do like -17, and we come around the bike and we just paint around him with a slightly darker color, just through the logic of darkening all this around him, it's going to make him appear brighter. I like to do this and I'll maybe bring that right over here, around the smoke cloud. But with and without that, it just makes him pop a little bit more. It's a common tactic I'll use when I actually feel like I can't edit the subject, but I think he needs a little bit more to stand out. Take whatever he is and edit the opposite into the background behind him. I think there needs to be a little bit more saturation in the ground around us. And saturation can be caused by contrast. Saturation can come from contrast as well. So I think this foreground just needs to get a little bit darker, as well as not quite as much, but a little bit behind the biker. And we're going to essentially let behind there, though, naturally be a little bit more hazy. Just because it's a bit further away. And again, another good time just to look at the edit and see how far we've taken it. Should I maybe adjust the color? Should I adjust the brightness? It just lets you see where you've come from. And Photoshop tends to be mostly color. We're not looking at any really crazy massive changes in brightness. I might add just a little bit more to this sky over here. You don't want to overpower what's going on over here, but it just helps add dimension to it, where it's like the sky in the background is bright, and then the middle and the foreground. Your edits really just want to exaggerate what actually happened in the photo, which is why, again, I would say what I always go for is exaggerated realism. From there, I actually think I want a little more brightness and this behind him. And from here, I just feel good about it. And sometimes, depending on the image, I will like to leave it. Like I'll just leave it in Photoshop, I'll save it, and I'll come back to it just to look at it with fresh eyes and say, is this a final product? But I feel pretty good about this. I'm going to leave it, to be honest with you. I'm going to leave it here. I'm going to look at it tomorrow and see how I feel about it. But I feel pretty good about the image at this point. But there is something to be said about staring at an image for too long. You'll start to lose focus for where the contrast is, where the brightness, where the yellow point is. If you look at things for long enough, your brain makes a lot of adjustments. And there are things that people will do, like they'll come into the image and they'll image rotate it to like flip canvas horizontally. They might do that. So they can look at it from this side and say, that tricks my brain enough to be like, I actually think that I need a little bit more saturation in the foreground. I think this is actually a really even edit and I really like it. But I'm going to give it to a fresh brain to look at and come to the same conclusion. Okay, so quick update on the next day. I did end up adding just a little bit of warmth here into this foreground with a photo filter. I do like to use those sometimes for warm and cool. It's not a hard and fast rule, but I tend to find things that are a little warmer in the foreground make them pop for being in front of us a little bit more. And I did add a little bit of blue saturation back into the glasses just because I think this photo really benefits from that contrast. But I've looked at it the next day with fresh eyes. I feel really good about where it's at, and it's going to be on my website. And we're done. For all of you who watched the entire process, you're a trooper. I know this is a little bit more boring, but I really hope just taking a photo from the beginning to the end, you could learn something. Please tell me how you edit your photos. If there's a process that I just don't do that you do, tell me. I'd love to hear it. I'd love to add it to my arsenal. And have a great day. Cheers.